What up, YouTube? Back at you with another video. I wanted to talk about something today that hit me recently. Recently I've been reconnecting with some old friends and acquaintances, and I kept circling back to this weird pattern that I've been noticing in my life for a while now. And maybe you've seen it too. You ever notice that some people only really show up when you're struggling? Like they only know how to love you when you're low. They only feel connected to you in times of chaos. And I've really been unpacking that because it's one of the most subtle and unspoken dynamics, like toxic dynamics in relationships when it comes to like family and friends or even your partners. Like on the surface, it looks like love. It looks like care. You know, they're checking in, they're offering advice. They're there for the venting sessions. They're by your side when everything is falling apart. But the moment you start getting your shit together, they go quiet. You know what I mean? Like they fall back. Sometimes they even get like irritated for some reason. And I've been thinking like, why is that? And I'm starting to think it's because your healing is making them irrelevant. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that most people are this way. I'm addressing a very small minority of people here. In fact, I believe that it's way more common for people to stick around when times are good and fun, and when things get rough, they're nowhere to be found. You know, I think that scenario is way more common. I'm talking about a specific type of person, a toxic person that you may have encountered or are currently involved with. When people who you've gone through the trenches with, you know, when they start to fall off, when you're winning at life, you know, that kind of person. And I realized that those people weren't loving you. Maybe they did love you, but more importantly, they were loving the role that they got to play in your suffering. It made them feel needed. It made them feel important. And once that version of you started to disappear and grow out of that, they disappeared. And an important thing to remember is your growth will make certain people uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your elevation disrupts that dynamic that you guys had, that they were attached to. Because, I mean, let's face it, some people fall in love with who you are, but not always with who you're becoming. You know, you ever notice how easy it is sometimes to get support from somebody when you're at your lowest and you're just like, yo, I need help. I'm going through it. I'm losing it. You know, they'll drop everything. They'll run by your side. And when you finally get your shit together and you're fucking killing it and you look happier than you've ever been and you're leveling up and you start to exceed everybody's expectations of you, suddenly people start acting a little different. You know, like they don't seem as enthusiastic to talk about your accomplishments as they did when they were talking about your struggles. That's because a healed version of you doesn't validate them anymore. I remember a time when I was in a really dark place, like struggling financially, getting over a very emotional breakup. I was burnt out. I had no clear direction. And during that season, yo, everybody was around. People were checking on me constantly. I felt like I had a tribe, you know, but I also felt like I was this little thing that they needed to care for. But the moment I started gaining clarity, you know, when I started waking up early, pulling myself out of a dark place mentally, building discipline, hitting the gym again, doing all that inner work, certain individuals completely vanished. And I felt the change in energy. Like they weren't clapping for me anymore. They weren't rooting for me anymore. And it took me a while to realize, like, they weren't supporting me. They were supporting that struggling version of me that made them feel better about their own life. And we need to recognize that sometimes help is really just control. And there's another layer to all of this. And it's something called the savior complex that some people have. So a savior complex is when people have the tendency or the urge to fix other people's problems. You know, people with this mindset feel this intense need to rescue others and fix their lives and step in and to be the hero. And it sounds noble on the surface, and most of the time it is, I'd like to say, but it's not always about love. A lot of times it's about control and them feeding their own ego. Sometimes people's efforts to help others are driven by a belief that they're more capable and superior than people that they're trying to help. You know, people with the savior complex often believe that they're more capable and more emotionally intelligent or morally superior than the person that they're helping. And they see themselves as the one who knows better. And they think that they have a greater ability to solve your problems than you do. So they insert themselves into your problems. They give all this unsolicited advice, and they act like your survival depends on them. And here's a twist. Some people don't want you to get better, because the moment you start to stand on your own, the moment you develop true independence, you no longer need them. And remember, they weren't helping you. They were feeding their own ego by being needed. So what changed my perspective is the way I started to look at these people. Instead of feeling bitter and abandoned, I started to just be grateful that the truth revealed itself, because anyone who falls off when you rise was never really riding for the real you. They were addicted to your chaos and the role that they played in that. So letting go of these people creates space, and it creates space for those who want to see you win. All right, so if you're watching this right now and you're in that season when you're evolving, elevating, moving different, you're going to start to notice the people who aren't cheering you on anymore, the people who aren't clapping for you anymore. And honestly, fuck it, bro. Like, let that clarity guide you. Let them go. Let that silence speak, and let that distance form, because your growth is not supposed to be comfortable for everyone. It's just supposed to be necessary for you. And it's not about leaving people behind that were once there for you, but it's just realizing that some people are not going to be willing to come with you, and some people can't come with you to the next phase of your life. So some people who only loved you when you were struggling, and now you're rising, now that you're glowing, now that you're grounded in your power, they don't know who you are anymore. That's totally fine, because you do, and that's all that matters. All right, so that's it for the video. Stay solid, stay focused, and don't ever apologize for becoming a version of yourself that finally left your dark, dysfunctional past behind. All right, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.